Hollywood and Washington, D.C. have a certain kind of person. It's a power thing. They have a tremendous amount of power. People in Hollywood have the power to really sculpt Americans' attitudes about a lot of different things. And of course, people in Washington, D.C. have the power to make laws. We've got David Boies using Black Cube to protect Harvey Weinstein, and the same guy is one of the architects of the Epstein Victims Compensation Fund, which really shows pretty much right out of the gate that something is seriously awry with the Epstein Victims Compensation Fund.
Yeah. What? So I mean, how do they operate? How does Black Cube operate? Let's hear a scenario.
It all depends upon it's gathering intelligence on people. Like they went after David Boies deployed Black Cube on these journalists that were writing an article on Harvey Weinstein, and they were just looking for dirt on them that they could use to dissuade them to continue writing that article. And with Rose McGowan, they kind of infiltrated her life as like friends. And I mean, who knows what they were trying to do with her? I mean, probably trying to get her to exonerate Harvey Weinstein, but she never did. I mean, and she's been pretty much banished from Hollywood. Even though a bunch of women came out, she was like one of the first and the most vocal. And Harvey Weinstein had gotten away with that stuff for years.
Yeah.
It's, I've kind of come to think that Hollywood and Washington, D.C. have a certain kind of person.
Gee, I wonder what leads you to believe that.
But they're both, it's kind of interesting. Both people in Hollywood and D.C., it's a power thing. They have a tremendous amount of power. People in Hollywood have the power to really sculpt Americans' attitudes about a lot of different things. And of course, people in Washington, D.C. have the power to make laws that govern all of us. And Hollywood Babylon, there was a book written by a guy named Kenneth Anger, kind of a nasty piece of work, but he wrote a book called Hollywood Babylon. And someone needs to write a book called Potomac on the Sodom and Gomorrah on the Potomac. I mean, I think that would be a good book. That might even be one of my next books. I don't know. Sodom and Gomorrah on the Potomac by Nick Bryant.
It'll be a good one.
But with David Boies, he's handled all this litigation. And these women have to sign these NDAs. So the government has worked very hard to cover up Epstein, but it cannot tell these women that they can't sue their perpetrators, these other perpetrators. But if you get money and sign that NDA, that Victims Compensation Fund is doing something that the government can't.
Why do you think that he hasn't employed Black Cube on you?
Maybe he has. I'm just kind of too obtuse to know. I mean, I know I've had one death threat, but I might have had others. I'm just too much I'm too thick-headed to. I'm not inclined towards paranoia. So, who knows what happens? I don't know. If you write the kind of stuff that I write, you cannot really be paranoid. That'd be if I had paranoid inclinations, I'd still be underneath my bed.
What else have you uncovered?
So what's really interesting is when David Boies started taking on these clients, these Epstein victims, he quickly conscripted a guy named Stan Pottinger, who was an assistant U.S. Attorney General. And I call him the Forrest Gump of cover-ups. If the government needed a cover-up, Stan Pottinger would be there. He covered up Kent State, where the 4 students got shot by National Guardsmen. There was a tape. The Justice Department had a tape of those soldiers being ordered to shoot, but the grand jury that Pottinger oversaw, that tape was never played. And actually, that tape didn't come out till like 2005. So he covered that up. And the FBI had a program called Coel Probe, in which it completely trampled on the rights of Americans, open mail, and it sent during this period, a letter was sent to Martin Luther King, who was about to get the Nobel Peace Prize. And it had, I think it had like some tapes of King having an affair. And the letter, which I believe was written by William Sullivan, who was like the number 3 guy, told King that he needed to commit suicide before he accepted the Nobel Prize, or these tapes would come out. Coretta King, his wife, was called and told about his affairs. So it was really, COINTELPRO was really nasty, especially like with the American Indian movement and also the Black Panthers. And there's evidence that COINTELPRO definitely contributed to the death of Fred Hampton, who was a Black Panther in Chicago. But there was a member of the American Indian movement named Emory Aquish, and the FBI floated information that she was an informant, and she was murdered by 2 members of the American Indian movement because they thought she was an informant. So the church hearings, which looked into COINTELPRO, found all this stuff out about what had been going on. And they had 20,000 pages of documents, and they'd interviewed a number of FBI agents. And Stan Pottinger was going to come in and he was going to exact justice. And no one got indicted. Not a single person was indicted for COINTELPRO when Stan Pottinger was the Assistant Attorney General. And Richard Helms, the CIA had a program called Operation Chaos, where they were also doing domestic spying. And Stan Pottinger was going to exact justice with that. And Richard Helms testified before Congress that that no Americans had been spied on, and then the church hearings found out that a lot of Americans had been spied on, and their mail had been opened and other things. And Stan Pottinger was going to get to the bottom of that. And Richard Helms was charged with 2 misdemeanors and had to pay $2,000. And it's kind of interesting. Stan Pottinger he went out with Gloria Steinem for 9 years. Now, she wasn't a CIA asset also. The founder of the Americans or Women's Liberation, I mean, Steinem was getting money from the CIA. Now, she said that she was getting money in 59 through 61, but I found an article in a feminist magazine out of San Francisco that she was getting money from the CIA for the majority of the 60s. So her and Stan Pottinger were a couple. And CIA assets and love, what a wonderful story.
No matter where you're watching Shawn Ryan Show from, if you get anything out of this, please like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, share this everywhere you possibly can. And if you're feeling extra generous, please leave us a review on Apple and Spotify podcasts.